Hey everyone, if you're watching this, hit that like button and subscribe right now because I'm about to confess something I never thought I'd say out loud. Last month I went on a secret night trip with my wife and her best friend. What started as an innocent getaway turned into the most intense, forbidden experience of my life, and I still can't believe it happened. My wife and I had been married for 8 years. The spark was gone. We worked long hours, came home exhausted, and our nights had become quiet routines of shared silence. I loved her deeply, but I felt invisible, like we were just two people sharing bills and the same bed. Every night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was all there was, if the warmth between us had quietly slipped away while we weren't looking. That's when her best friend Lena started coming around more often. Lena was the opposite of my wife in every tempting way. Curvy where my wife was slim, bold where my wife was reserved, with long dark hair that carried the soft scent of vanilla and jasmine whenever she leaned in close. She was single, confident, and always had that knowing little smile when my wife wasn't watching, like she could see right through the careful distance I tried to keep. I remember the first time it hit me. We were all sitting in our living room after dinner, the three of us. My wife was scrolling on her phone, half laughing at something online. Lena sat across from me on the couch, legs tucked under her, and when she reached for her glass, her fingers brushed mine for half a second. Just that, nothing more. But the heat from her skin lingered on my hand like a secret I couldn't shake. I pulled back quickly, heart suddenly loud in my chest, telling myself it was nothing, just an accident. Yet later that night, lying beside my sleeping wife, I kept feeling that tiny brush of warmth, and I hated how much I replayed it. Lena's laugh was different too, low, easy, like it wrapped around you. My wife's laugh had grown softer over the years, tired from the long days, but Lena's, it made the room feel smaller, warmer. She would tease me about silly things, work stress, the way I always ordered the same coffee, always when my wife was in the other room or stepping out for a moment. Those stolen seconds left me breathless, guilty for the way my pulse quickened at the sound of her voice dropping just a little lower. I kept telling myself I was imagining it, that the way her eyes held mine a beat too long was just friendliness, that the vanilla jasmine scent drifting past me when she walked by was harmless. But deep down I knew something was shifting. I loved my wife. I still do. We built a life together. Yet here was this other woman, her best friend, filling the empty spaces I didn't even realize had grown inside me. Every time she visited, the air in our house felt thicker, heavier with something unspoken. I started finding excuses to stay in the room longer when she was there, then hating myself for it. One evening my wife mentioned a weekend trip to the coast. Just the two of us, she said, to reconnect, to remember why we fell in love. She smiled at me with that familiar tired hope in her eyes. I nodded, pulling her close, whispering that it sounded perfect. But then she added, almost casually, we should invite Lena too. It'll be more fun with three of us. I should have said no. I should have suggested it's just us. Instead I heard my own voice agree, light and easy, like it was no big deal. That night after my wife fell asleep, I lay there in the dark with my heart racing for all the wrong reasons. The thought of being in a car for hours with both of them, sharing meals, watching sunsets, breathing the same salt air. Lena's scent already haunted the edges of my mind. I pressed my face into the pillow, trying to drown out the quiet hunger stirring low in my chest. This was supposed to be about fixing things with my wife. So why did the idea of Lena coming along feel like stepping too close to a flame I knew would burn? I told myself it would be fine. We were all adults. Nothing would happen. It was just a trip. Just fresh air and laughter and maybe, just maybe, a chance to feel something again without crossing any lines. But even as I thought it, I could already feel the pull, that dangerous gravity drawing me toward the one person I should never want this close. The morning we left, Lena arrived at our door wearing a light sundress that moved with her like water. She hugged my wife first, then turned to me with that smile. Her hair brushed my shoulder as she stepped inside to grab her bag, and the warm vanilla jasmine scent wrapped around me again. My wife was busy loading the car, humming softly. For one suspended second, Lena's eyes met mine across the hallway. Nothing was said, but the air between us felt alive, trembling with everything we weren't admitting. I swallowed hard, grabbed the keys, and told myself this was still innocent. Just a night trip with my wife and her best friend. Nothing more. Yet as we pulled out of the driveway, the three of us laughing about nothing important, I already knew I was lying to myself. And the worst part? I didn't want to stop. We started having more group hangouts after that morning. Lena would settle onto the couch right beside me while my wife chatted from the kitchen, her thigh pressing warm against mine through the thin fabric of our jeans, not moving away, not even shifting, just staying there, letting the heat build until I forgot how to sit still. She'd lean forward to grab the remote or a glass of wine, and her hair would fall close enough that the vanilla jasmine scent flooded my lungs, sweet and dizzying like breathing in something I wasn't allowed to want. One evening my wife came up with the idea of a weekend road trip to the coast. "We need to reconnect," she said softly, her hand on my arm, eyes hopeful in that way that used to melt me. Then she added, almost like an afterthought, "Lena should come too. It'll be more fun with the three of us." My chest tightened. I should have gently said no, suggested it stay just us. Instead I smiled and agreed, voice steady even as something inside me stirred dangerously. Every car ride turned the air thick with unspoken things. Lena in the back seat, sometimes leaning between the front seats to point out the ocean or tell a story, her breath brushing my shoulder. My wife driving, humming along to the radio, completely unaware of how Lena's perfume mixed with the salt wind coming through the cracked window. At shared meals by the water, our knees would bump under the small table, sending little shocks up my leg. I'd laugh at something she said, then catch myself glancing too long at the way her lips curved around the rim of her glass. That vanilla jasmine scent became my quiet obsession. It clung to the hotel room even after Shed only passed through. One night, after my wife had fallen asleep from the long day and the wine, Lena played an old R&B song softly on her phone, the same slow, sultry track we'd all danced to years ago at some house party. The smooth hotel sheets felt too warm against my skin as I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, imagining the wrong body beside me. The music wrapped around the room like a secret, low and pulsing, and I couldn't stop the thoughts from drifting, from pulling me under. I kept telling myself this was wrong. Jess, your wife's best friend. You love your wife. This is betrayal, plain and simple. Every time Lena's eyes lingered on me a second too long across the dinner table or in the elevator, guilt twisted sharp in my stomach like a knife turning slowly. I started making excuses to stay glued to my wife's side, suggesting we take walks together, offering to help with everything, so I wouldn't be alone with Lena in the hallway or by the pool. But the desire only grew stronger, eating away at my resolve like waves against the shore, relentless and quiet. The more I tried to push it down, the more it rose up in the small moments. Her laugh carrying on the sea breeze. The way her sundress shifted when she walked ahead of us on the path, sunlight catching the fabric. My wife reaching for my hand, warm and familiar, while my mind wandered to the electricity that sparked whenever Lena brushed past me in the narrow hotel doorway. I hated how alive it made me feel. How the guilt made everything sharper, sweeter, more unbearable. And then, one quiet evening on the balcony while my wife was inside freshening up, Lena turned to me with that soft smile and said something ordinary about the sunset. But her voice dropped just enough. Her eyes held mine just long enough that the air between us trembled again. My heart slammed against my ribs. I wanted to step closer. I wanted to step away. Instead, I stood frozen, the ocean roaring in the distance, knowing I was already losing the fight I kept pretending I could win. One bright morning we packed light bags and drove along the winding coastal road, windows down, salt air rushing in. My wife laughed at every silly joke Lena tossed from the back seat, her voice light and easy like nothing in the world pulled at the edges of my thoughts. We stopped at rocky overlooks, posing for photos, arms around each other, smiles wide under the sun. Lena's fingers brushed mine when she handed me the camera, just a second too long, enough to send heat crawling up my arm. I told myself it was nothing, just wind and laughter and three friends chasing waves. By afternoon the light turned golden, painting everything softer. We walked the shore barefoot, sand warm between our toes. My wife ran ahead, splashing in the shallows, calling us to join. Lena stayed closer, her steps matching mine, shoulder occasionally grazing my sleeve. Each accidental touch felt like a spark that refused to die. I kept my eyes on the horizon, pretending the pull in my chest was only the tide. That night my wife poured too much wine at dinner and slipped into bed early, murmuring she needed rest for tomorrow's hike. The suite felt quiet except for the distant crash of waves. Lena and I ended up on the narrow balcony, city lights flickering far below like scattered secrets. She leaned on the railing, hair lifting in the breeze, and whispered a joke about the couple we'd seen arguing earlier. Her words curled too close, warm against my ear. Our hands rested near each other on the cool metal. Not touching. Almost. My pulse hammered so loud I was sure she could hear it. I laughed softly, too softly, and the sound hung between us like smoke. Every time our eyes met, the air grew heavier, thicker, until breathing felt like work. She shifted her weight and her knee brushed mine for a heartbeat. Electricity shot straight through me. I wanted to move away. I wanted to lean in. Instead, I stayed frozen, the ocean murmuring below, my mind screaming this is wrong while my body leaned toward the gravity she created without even trying. The next day, I found a moment alone with my wife on a quiet stretch of beach. The sun warmed our skin as I took her hand and suggested we cut the trip short. Maybe send Lena back early. I miss just as I lied, voice gentle. Hoping she'd agree, she tilted her head, eyes sparkling with amusement, and laughed it off like it'd told the funniest story. Yuri being silly, we're having such a good time. Her fingers squeezed mine reassuringly. I smiled back, but inside the knot my stomach tightened. At night in our shared suite, the three of us lay in the big bed, my wife between us at first, then shifting in her sleep until I was painfully aware of Lena's presence on the other side. Darkness wrapped around us like a secret. My heart woodland slow. The moral voice inside me roared, "Stop this now, before it ruins everything," but my skin burned with awareness of how close she was, how easily I could reach across the small space. Fists clenched under the sheets, fighting the current that wanted to pull me under. By the third night, the wine flowed freely again. My wife drank deeply, laughter turning drowsy until she passed out on the couch, breathing steady and deep. The living area glowed dimly from one lamp, shadows dancing across the walls. Lena sat across from me, legs tucked under her, eyes reflecting the soft light. The room felt smaller, warmer, charged. She looked at me for a long moment, voice barely above a whisper. "You've been staring at me all trip. I know you want this as much as I do." The words landed like a match on right ender. My throat went dry. Before I could form any protest, she leaned in slow, deliberate. Her lips met mine in a kiss that tasted of red wine and every forbidden thought had tried to bury. Warm, deep, unraveling. All the hesitation it clung to shattered in that single breath. I kissed her back, the world narrowing to the soft press of her mouth, the faint tremble in her breath, the way everything else faded except a terrifying, exquisite pull between us. We moved to the couch in the dim glow of that single lamp, the fabric still warm from where my wife had been moments before. Lena's body settled against mine, not rushing, just close enough that every inch of space between us felt alive with heat. Her skin carried that faint vanilla and jasmine scent that had haunted me since the balcony, wrapping around me like a slow tide I couldn't fight. I felt the soft press of her curves, the way she fit there as if the universe had quietly rearranged itself for this one stolen moment. My breath caught, shallow and uneven, while hers brushed warm against my collarbone. Nothing loud, nothing frantic. Just this overwhelming wave of surrender that made my chest ache with how badly it wanted it and how terrified I was to have it. The pleasure built quiet and intense, like a storm finally breaking after days of pressure. Every small shift sent electricity humming under my skin, her warmth flooding my senses until the rest of the world blurred. My wife slept just 10 feet away in the next room, her steady breathing a fragile reminder that this was madness. The thrill of it twisted with guilt so sharp it nearly stole my air, yet I couldn't pull back. I was alive in a way I hadn't felt in years, every nerve singing with the secret we were keeping right under our shared roof. When the moment crested and eased, silence rushed back in, heavy and trembling. We lay there tangled in the aftermath, hearts still racing, the air thick with everything we weren't saying. Morning light filtered through the curtains too soon. My wife stirred first, stretching with that familiar sleepy smile, completely unaware. She suggested we extend the trip another few days, her voice light and excited as she poured coffee for all of us. I stood frozen in the kitchenette, watching the two of them, my loyal wife chatting happily about hikes and sunsets, and Lena across the table, eyes meeting mine for a split second with a flicker of shared knowing. The knot in my stomach twisted harder. In that heartbeat I made my choice. I couldn't stop. Not yet. This didn't mean I loved my wife any less, I told myself. It was just one secret night that had woken something wild and hungry in me again. A reminder I was still desired, still capable of feeling that pull. It would stay contained, I rationalized. A private fire we could bank down before it spread. Even as the words formed in my mind, I knew they were fragile, already cracking under the weight of what we'd done. The rest of the morning passed in a haze of normalcy that felt like walking on thin ice. My wife laughed at something Lena said, reaching over to squeeze my hand the way she always did, trusting and warm. I smiled back, but inside the guilt crashed like waves against rock, mixing with this new, terrifying craving that refused to quiet. I kept telling myself it was harmless, just a momentary slip that made the trip feel electric without changing anything real. Yet every glance toward Lena sent that same gravity tugging at me, stronger now, promising more if I let it. So tell me in the comments, should I have stopped right there on that couch, or would you have done the same in the dark with temptation breathing so close? Do you think a secret like this can stay hidden forever, or is it already unraveling everything we thought was safe? Drop a like if you want the full details of how the rest of that trip twisted even deeper, and subscribe for the next confession, because that night was only the spark. The real ache is what came after, lingering like smoke that never quite clears. I still wake up some nights tasting that almost forbidden warmth, wondering how long before the tide pulls us all under.